Hey, church family, thanks so much for joining us this week as we begin to look at the resurrection of Christ here in our Daily Connections. Brother Brent kicked us off yesterday, and we're going to continue to look in John chapter 11 and looking at the importance of just telling God exactly what we think and exactly how we feel. And I know that sounds kind of strange right off the bat, but this is a really important concept that we need to look at. So here in John chapter 11, we're going to be looking at verse 20. And so it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot here, but I think that we'll find that there is some things that we can draw from here. So John 11, verse 20, it says, "As soon as Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went to meet him, but Mary remained seated in the house." Now remember, Lazarus has died. That's what's kind of happened. And they are mourning, and Jesus didn't get there in time to save him. Now we know the rest of the story. We know that Christ is going to bring Lazarus out of the grave. But here you see the personality differences between Mary and Martha. Mary is fine to just stay back, do kind of her own thing, but Martha is much more outspoken. We can even look back in Scripture. We see some accounts in Luke where we kind of see Martha's personality. She stays busy. She's constantly going. She's always doing something. And so Martha, man, she leaves her duties when she hears that Jesus is coming, and she goes to him. And everything that Martha's going to talk about, we'll get to that later, but everything that Martha's going to talk about, I wouldn't say is necessarily grounded in faith. But certainly Martha is willing to say exactly what is on her mind. And this is an interesting concept for us to look at, because I know what you're thinking. Why do I need to say what is on my mind? Jesus already knows what I think. And you're 100% right. Jesus knows exactly what we think. God knows all things. And Jesus, as the Son of God and as God in person, God in the flesh, he knows everything. But there is a type of submission and a type of faith that we kind of see or a sense of faith and submission to Christ. Whenever we tell him what's going on, we may be upset with Christ. Christ already knows that. We may be upset with God over a circumstance. He already knows that. But when we confess those things to him, hey God, I don't understand why you let my loved one pass. I'm upset with you about that. Why couldn't you save them? I think that it just shows that there's a real relationship there with God. God is a big enough God and a loving enough God to take criticism. Now, here's the thing. We know that God's perfect, and we know that God's plan is perfect. And when we start that process of mourning, or we start that process of disappointment, whatever it may be, we start with kind of telling God how we feel. We also are then beginning to start that process of understanding that his way is the right way. We may not understand that way. We may not understand all the bits and pieces of it, but we begin the process of submitting to his will. Of submitting to him completely. And so I would just encourage you, as you struggle through things in life, that we say something to God about that. Again, we're not criticizing God. Who are we? We're not God. And we saw what kind of happened. If you look in the Old Testament, we can see that there were many who criticized God. We shouldn't criticize God. That's not what I'm saying, but we can go to him with our disappointments, and he's big enough and loving enough to take those and maybe even give us an answer, an answer that's the right answer, that's the truth, and again, that's us submitting to him. So our author gives us a couple of questions for us to look at. First question: when have you been hesitant to share how you really feel with God? When have you kind of held back talking to God about how you feel about different circumstances? And then second question: why is it important that we share our hearts and not simply try to say all the right things when we engage with God? I think I mentioned one, we're beginning that process of submission whenever we decide to share what's going on in our lives. But also I think that whenever we just try and say all the right things or the God things, I think what's happening is we're creating this false sense of a relationship. It's not a real relationship. It's fake. We don't talk like that to other people. And while God is certainly holy, we need to approach him with the understanding of that holiness. But we also can be real with God, right? Because he already knows. So, church family, I would encourage you this week as you're walking through life, let's be real with God in conversations with him. Let's normalize having conversations with him. And as you do that, we want you to know that we love you and we're praying for you.